The hall they rented for my father's retirement sat behind a small golf course outside town. Neutral carpets, tall windows, the kind of place that tries to look formal without being expensive. Except this one looked expensive. White tablecloths, polished serving trays, a catering team moving in and out of the kitchen with practiced speed. Someone had even arranged a decorative display of desserts on glass stands. I stood near the back wall for a while watching. My father looked happy. That part mattered. 40 years working maintenance at the same municipal building, and now everyone was clapping him on the back like he'd just finished something heroic. Maybe he had. People kept coming over to shake his hand. I helped adjust a microphone stand for one of the speeches, refilled a few glasses, the usual quiet tasks that somehow always landed on me at family gatherings. I had gotten used to it. A month earlier I'd mentioned in passing that my company had given me a performance bonus. It had come up while my mother was complaining about rising grocery prices. It hadn't seemed like a big conversation. Now I looked around the room again. The catering staff carried out a platter of roasted vegetables that smelled like garlic and rosemary. Behind them came a tray of carved beef. This wasn't a small dinner. My Aunt Marlene drifted over toward a group of my father's old coworkers holding a glass of wine. "Oh, we went all out for him," she said proudly. 40 years deserves a real send-off. One of the coworkers gestured toward the food. "This must have cost a fortune." Marlene laughed. "Oh please, we had help." She pointed toward me without lowering her voice. "Why used his bonus to cover the catering?" "Hope you don't mind." The group turned their heads toward me with polite smiles. For a second I assumed she was joking. Then my brother Ryan leaned against the table beside her. "Think of it as paying us back for existing," he said, grinning. A few people chuckled. It wasn't cruel laughter. Just the easy kind people use when a joke sounds socially acceptable. No one asked whether I had actually agreed to pay for anything. I stood there with the same smile I use in meetings when someone says something slightly inappropriate, but not worth interrupting the room over. My father was across the hall, talking to his supervisor. He hadn't heard any of it. I nodded once toward the group and stepped away. Near the entrance doors there was a quiet corner with a bench. I sat down and opened my phone. The accounts weren't complicated. Over the years, certain things had just merged. My mother had access to one shared account for convenience. Ryan occasionally transferred rent through another. A small savings pool existed that I had originally set up to help my parents handle larger bills without worrying. None of it had ever been framed as permanent support. But no one had asked for permission lately either. They had simply started using it. I opened the banking app. One by one I moved the balances out. Nothing dramatic, just transferring funds back into my personal accounts and removing shared access. The process took maybe 4 minutes. When I finished, the shared balances all showed the same number. 0. For a moment I sat there with the phone still in my hand. Inside the hall someone began tapping a glass to start the next speech. I stood up and walked back in. My father was now telling a story about the winter of '98, when the heating system failed in the building, and he'd spent an entire weekend sleeping on a folding chair to keep the place running. People laughed in the right places. I clapped with everyone else. Before the cake came out, I went over and hugged him. "Congratulations," I said. "You leaving already?" he asked. "Early morning tomorrow." He nodded, still smiling from the attention around him. I slipped out quietly through the side doors. The evening air was cool, the parking lot mostly full. I got into my car and sat there for a minute before starting the engine. My phone buzzed as I pulled onto the road. A notification from the bank. Access permissions updated. Then another, and another. 15 minutes later the first call came through from my mother. I let it ring. I imagined the moment inside the hall when the notifications started appearing on everyone's screens. Balances changed. Access removed. Confusion first, then realization. By the time I reached the main road heading home, my phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't family. A voicemail alert from an unfamiliar number. Later that night I listened to it. A polite voice introduced himself as a representative from the catering company. He explained that during their routine authorization check, they had been informed that the account originally listed for event payment was no longer active. They were currently at the venue door, speaking with the event host to confirm how the remaining balance would be settled. His tone stayed professional the entire time. I deleted the message and set the phone on the table. The strange thing was, I didn't feel angry. Mostly just clear. For years I had assumed helping meant quietly absorbing whatever the family needed. Tonight was the first time I had stopped doing it, and somewhere across town, in a rented hall behind a golf course, everyone was learning what that difference actually looked like.